in 4, 3. All right, welcome everybody. Welcome back to another live streaming episode of Alternative Money Monday. Thanks for joining you. Thanks for joining us, rather. What a week it's been. What a weekend it was. And happy to see all these folks back. Hi to all the folks out in YouTube land. Of course, I'm JR, co-founder of Ledgerama, the makers of Wallet, the original, the safest, the trusted mobile wallet of the Hedera ecosystem. And I'm joined, as per usual, by our community manager, Tim Mungai. Hey, Tim, good to see you. Brandon, the HBAR Bull, always a pleasure to see you, my favorite influencer in the Web3 space. And today I'm also joined by distinguished guests. We have Andy from Citadel Wallet, and we've got David from ParyFund / Hashfarms. So really appreciate you guys joining us. And of course, folks, if you like this content that you see, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give us a like, and most importantly, leave us a comment. We love the comments. It really kind of shows what's on the minds of the folks out in YouTube land. And of course, at the end of the show, we're going to give away some jam tokens. So always loving giving out some of those jam tokens, courtesy of Tune.fm and Andrew Antar and the folks over there at Tune.fm. So, all right. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. But before I get into the juicy topic of the past week or so, I would like to drop, just kind of get a quick word from our guests here, just a little bit about who you are and what you do, so the folks out there that may not know you can get a little bit of more intel. David, I'm going to start with you if you don't mind. If you could just kind of real briefly talk a little bit about your background and what the ParyFund is and what your goals are.
Yeah, definitely, Jeremy. Thanks for having me. By way of introduction, my name's David Lane. I'm a partner at ParyFund. For my primary form of employment, I work for a Japanese institutional fund of funds. We manage Japanese pension money. My responsibilities are a portfolio manager for their VC and PE investments. We also do some private credit. Work right outside of New York City. COVID hit. Myself and my two neighbors didn't have to commute into the city anymore, so we started ParyFund. Pari is nothing more than an aggregation of our kids' initials, Parker, Alexander, Ryan, and Yell. And we threw a little Buddha up there to remind us to be patient, because we went seeing them 3 hours a day to seeing them 24 hours a day. The portfolio is split evenly between crypto and TradeFi. In crypto, we focused on the Hedera ecosystem. About 5 months into it, we got in probably October, November of 21. Immediately, we recognized there was a huge creativity spike. It's one of the most creative ecosystems I've ever been a part of. But we noticed a lot of projects lacked, for better terms, financial maturity. So we started the Hashfarms project. And what that is essentially, it's a free advisory service. All you have to do is be building on Hedera. And what we try to do is help you get from proof of concept to a path to revenue generation. We treat all the projects like a company. What's your product service? What's your friction point? How do you solve it? How do we get your name out there? We can help you with everything from legal to accounting to capital fundraising. Can't help you with coding. We're all idiots. My daughter's my Discord IT manager. I'm still getting used to that. I've worked on it with a Bloomberg terminal for like the last 18 years. So it's still getting used to all the, the new social media. But yeah, projects are free to reach out to us. We try to help you generate. Once you get to a path to revenue generation, you've got your prototype built. You're pretty much on the hash graph at that point. So then, we hope you, we wish you well, and we hope you speak highly of us down the road. And that's us in a nutshell. Try to keep it under minutes.
Yeah. So of course I've seen you in the ecosystem quite a bit, but to be honest, until I was preparing for this, I really wasn't 100%. I really wasn't really sure what ParyFund was there for, and realized that, wow, I should have been talking to these guys months ago.
Yeah, our underlying thesis, people ask what the motivation. We own a lot of HBAR, and again, we're traditional finance background. So as much as we'd love to see like a 2x spike, overnight, we know that's only hype driven. So we feel that by helping as many projects as possible, it's going to drive adoption, which is ultimately going to help the price grow organically and have a firm foundation. I know it's kind of like the war on drugs a little bit, like trying to tackle one project at a time, but it's a good fight. And we actually, all three of us went the TradeFi route right out of college, like investment banking, working on Wall Street, didn't really take a lot of entrepreneurial risk. So while we can't go back in time, it's been a blast helping a lot of these younger, newer projects, younger guys, help them avoid the pitfalls that we've seen in our 20 some odd years of working on Wall Street.
Right. I love that. I love that reason for existence there, because same base. It's very similar to the reason that my partner and I decided to get into the space and build a wallet. So we had some technical chops, and we were excited about the Hedera ecosystem. And at the time that we started building, there was no, particularly in mobile, there was no safe, stable way to transact with HBAR. So we said, you know what, we got to help out the ecosystem and build one. So that's what we did.
Yeah, friction point right there.
Right. Andy, welcome. Again, thanks for joining us. So Citadel Wallet, getting a lot of attention, a lot of good PR, a lot of good press. Love to see it. Of course, hardware wallets are a crucial element to the cryptocurrency ecosystems of all different flavors. So welcome. Could you tell us just real briefly about yourself and what Citadel Wallet is, and then we'll jump right into discussions of what happened last week.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jeremy, a lot for inviting for this interview and the show. I'm really excited to be here. Really excited to be talking to you guys about Citadel Wallet and anything else that can come up. It's been an interesting last couple of weeks for sure. A little bit about me. I'm known in the community as HBAR to the moon. I've been running that account since day one. HBAR was public. Hedera Network was public. It was just such an interesting project and a technology, and I was fascinated by the potential of this network and what it can bring to the world in the future, to Web3 first, and then to all the different industries as a whole. So got really passionate about it, started promoting it, talking about it, and then having the hardware and electrical engineering background. At some point, I was really interested in actually building something on the network and bringing my experience and expertise in what I've been doing, not just building other dApps and applications on the network. And that's where the idea of the Citadel Wallet came to me. I was thinking between secure IoT devices and the hardware wallet. I decided to start with the hardware wallet, which then can serve as a foundation for secure IoT devices in the future. So I have a lot of other plans associated with this hardware wallet. Citadel Wallet itself is a Hedera native hardware wallet I've been building for the last 6 to 8 months. You're right, lately I started to pushing it even more, since we're planning to go do the pre-orders very soon at the end of this month, and hoping to deliver the wallets to the users and the community members at the end of this year. We have developed a lot of it already. We'll dive into that later in the show. I don't want to spend too much time talking about the wallet now, but I'm really excited. The wallet is coming. It's a really important device for the community to secure their funds. From the latest events, we have seen so many wallet hacks and other hacks happening in Hedera ecosystem and other ecosystems. So we just wanted to make sure that we bring that extra level of security and comfort of mind to Hedera ecosystem. And then hopefully in the future, we can expand to other networks and projects too.
Yeah, I love the Web3 space is so interesting, right? You've got an electrical engineer. So David, what would you call your normal job title? What would that be? Fund manager?
Yeah, portfolio manager.
Portfolio manager.
Yeah.
So I mean,
not that glamorous.
Myself, Brandon, we're all bringing the skills that we had from our previous lives, right? Well, Brandon kind of took a left turn at Albuquerque and became an influencer. Well, but with Monetary Reset and everything beforehand, I mean, you were already in that space, but yeah, so it's just interesting. It's so interesting to see, people kind of, identify an opportunity, get involved. And then, I think most of us, we got involved and then probably said, wow, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in this ecosystem. What can I do to push this thing forward? What skills can I bring to the table to really push this thing to the next level? So,
well, Jeremy, that's a great point. No matter who's looking at this space, you can pull from your experience. Like you kind of were alluding to. I took a left turn there. I was in the oil and gas industry and came over, but I had all kinds of great leadership skills and things that keep my head cool when under pressure. So no matter what industry you're working in, you can come over to this industry and you're going to have skills that are going to be viable and be able to be useful for the space. So just because you are taking that left turn at Albuquerque, like you mentioned, that doesn't mean you don't have things that'll carry over.
Absolutely. And that was the way, when I showed up to the Hedera 18, the hackathon in Dallas there, really when the first SDK was being launched, really in the very early days of Hedera, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do in the hackathon. And, and the folks said, no, you got to go ahead and jump in there, because they need, technology companies need people to do all sorts of things, right? All the accounting people, they need somebody to write pitch decks. They need salespeople. So it's, so whether you're a coder or whether you do something else, bring your skill set to the table and just jump right in there. Milan, welcome to the party.
Hey, thank you. It's the first time I'm joining the live stream.
Yeah. I was surprised to see your name pop up there, but I like to run these kind of like I used to run. So I was one of the early OG Hedera ambassadors, and we ran the meetup spaces. And I do kind of like to run these like the meetups. It's, kind of informal. We like to have fun and just talk to folks in the industry, especially people that are passionate about it and passionate about building the space. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and jump right into the juicy topic. Of course, there was an attack on the Hedera network last week, and it's kind of got, it's got people's, kind of the hackles raised a little bit. People are wondering what's going on. And so fortunately, the solution was met. But so just to kind of give the rundown of what happened, and I'll make this as brief as possible, given the kind of the nuts and bolts of the details of what happened here. But so on Thursday, March 9th, an attacker exploited the smart contract service code of the Hedera mainnet to transfer Hedera token service tokens held by certain DEXs to the attacker's own account. So as a result of the attack, Hedera decided to shut off the network proxies that were established in 2020. Those proxies were put there to kind of protect the network while it was in its infancy. And so, but when they shut down those proxies, it rendered the network offline. So it rendered the network inaccessible. So kind of the way that it's been described to me was so the consensus was still being reached, the Hedera network was still running, but basically the way it was described to me is if you want to think of the analogy of a car, the engine was still running, but the doors were locked and you couldn't get in to really do anything with it. So fortunately, retail user accounts were not at risk. So it was the accounts of these certain accounts of these DEXs where the swaps take place were at risk. And at the end of the day, approximately it was 600,000 US worth of assets were stolen from liquidity pools. And the way that they were able to accomplish this attack was an exploit. So they exploited a bug in precompiled contract code that my understanding was ported over from Uniswap v2. So there was precompiled contract code on Hedera, and they were able to exploit a bug in that to illicitly grant themselves authorization to withdraw tokens from these liquidity pools. So within the Hedera code and within the HTS code, there are certain keys, certain flags that can be set, and one of these is an approval flag or an approval key. And now this is I did attempt to unfortunately the more serious techies are not available for the show. They might have been able to get a little bit better deep dive and understanding of it, but essentially there are certain aspects of these tokens that allow that set approvals, right? So if something is going to be swapped, if a token is going to be swapped one for another, then an approval has to happen. Well, essentially there was a bug there that allowed them to look like there was a type of delegated call that was made, and they were able to essentially impersonate. So one account was able to impersonate another account that actually had the approval to do these withdrawals. So it was kind of this fancy technical way of impersonating an account that actually had authorization when the account didn't actually have authorization to make these withdrawals from the liquidity pools. So of course, a really quick reaction. There was so Hashport jumped in there and shut down their services or paused their services to in effect kind of trap the attacker and make it more difficult for them to get their funds out of the bridge. And of course, Hedera reacted quickly as well. I believe it was 13 hours before the cause, before the specific exploit was discovered, and then within 41 hours of the attack being discovered, the Hedera Governing Council voted to push the mainnet upgrade that eliminated the vulnerability. So it was a pretty stressful few days, especially for folks that are either have large HBAR holdings, wallets, the DEXs. We were all kind of going, what the heck's happening? It was pretty clear from the beginning. It looked like there was not, like the wallets weren't really vulnerable. It looked like the liquidity pools were really where the attacks were happening. But of course, it raised concerns and raised eyebrows and got everybody a little bit worried. But fortunately, like I said, as it was 41 hours after the attack, I believe. So today's the 13th. I believe it was actually sometime in the evening of the 11th this month, where they voted to push the mainnet upgrade, eliminating the vulnerabilities.
First thing about these old scenarios, something I admired is Hedera's professionalism, how they handled it with the quick responses. And when I woke up one morning and started seeing the stream of emails, especially because we're a wallet provider, everybody trying to access their wallets and they can't, then I realized that might be something wrong. So I rushed to Twitter and saw exactly what was happening. So it was a lot of trying to calm a lot of the community down. And Milan, I think everybody knows Milan, Hedera Dev on Twitter. How could you tell us what exactly you're doing, piecing together the history of?
Thanks, Tim. I mean, this is just, it is something wrong with my brain that kind of, if I have a challenge.
There's nothing wrong with your brain.
No, I'm in constant struggle with my brain, because if I got a challenge, and I know if I accept the challenge, I'm going to the bottom of it. And I thought, okay, I'm going to trace the scammer, the exploiter. And well, I mean, I accepted the challenge to myself because I thought, okay, well, this is, I can do that. And now I haven't done anything else since the start of the exploit. Literally, it's the only thing I do. I eat and I sleep, and the rest I'm just making connections on the diagram, like expanding it, the whole thing. And it is pretty bigger than I had thought. So every time I think, I might be at 10% of the diagram right now, and then 5 hours later, I might be at 10% of the diagram. So
and it's pretty impressive what you've done. And so I don't know if if you had it open, of course you're more than welcome to share. But essentially, what you've done is diagram out basically the accounts and where funds were going and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty impressive.
And this is one of the things why it is to be a criminal in the DLT space can be very difficult, because you can pick up all kinds of information by what Milan is doing, trying to figure out who is who and all that kind of stuff. But also, they were trying to get things over to Binance, and they deposited a very small amount onto Binance, and that got flagged immediately. So if they tried to sell it there, they were going to get in trouble. It's not easy to be a black hat hacker in the DLT space. There's a lot of places where you can get caught. So I would suggest whoever did this take off their black hat and put on their white hat, and they probably would have made out a lot better.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, the traces that I'm following go quite a long way back. So I think I would suggest to that same person probably just contact Hedera, because at a certain point all those things can connect. I'll share my screen, but I'll keep it. I won't zoom in, because at this point I don't want the person responsible. That I don't want him to know, or him or she to know certain information that I might have, so that he or she'll try to remove that information. Let me just share and then you can see
the spider web. Show us the spider web.
The spider web, yeah. All right, here we go. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
We can see it.
All right, so basically,
so this is Milan's blood, sweat, and tears poured over the past 5 days or so.
Yeah, and again, for those who are just tuning in, I'm not going to zoom in too much.
No,
but basically, it's what has been very helpful is people contacting me that they were victims of previous scam attempts. It allows me to connect different, give context and make the connections. So I'm still trying. I'm just thinking by myself the information I can share and the information I read and not share at this point. But
that's okay. That's okay, Milan. Go ahead.
Yeah, one thing I can say, if you look at all the purple diamonds, those are all people that are victim of a previous scam. So to be clear, like this section above, that's just the exploit, right? I mean, we all know what the amount was involved. I think it's a few $100,000. That's all clear. But then tracing it back to the Binance memo, you get a lot more information. And basically, this whole thing is part of a dusting attack, which probably all of you have noticed on your wallet, that you get these micro transactions that say like, oh, you've got a free airdrop on HBAR, go to this website. So well, why is it called dusting? Because you just, it's like dust, you throw it everywhere. There are tens and thousands of transactions of these dusting. So maybe they're partly contributing to the current TPS. And then, people think that maybe are not yet that experienced in Web3. They think, free HBARs. Especially because with every transaction, a reward, if you have staked your HBAR, a reward is triggered from 0.0800. So people might think, it's coming from a Hedera wallet. Or they also think, hey, I got like 20 HBAR. That's amazing. There's more. Instead, they don't see that they just got a tiny bar, which is like the smallest amount you can have in HBARs. So
Milan, I just want to touch on that, and I did a video specifically on this, explaining some of these hacks or these exploits that can be had. But essentially, what they're doing is they're sending you a very, very small amount of HBAR, as you said, one tiny bar, and that triggers. It's one of the things that can trigger the staking payment to go out. So you might get a payment of, like you said, 20 HBAR. It might be a few hundred HBAR. It might have been a while since you actually got your last staking payment. So it might be several days or even several weeks of payments that come into your wallet, and you might be like, hey, I just got 500 HBAR. Nobody would do that unless it was legitimate, right? But it's actually staking payments that you had already accrued from elsewhere. So it's very simple, but also it's smart of them to try to utilize it this way. And of course, like you said, there's been people in the space that might not understand what's going on that have gotten nailed by it. So it's really sad, but I'll let you continue on.
Yeah, no, absolutely what you're saying. It is really sad because, to be clear, this is all those victims. You see the purple diamonds over here, it's not like there was a hack or something with Hedera. Yes, the exploit was something that we talked about that, but then the same person did these scams, and that's just you as a person you follow that, you see that website, you go to the website, and then you think, I'm getting free HBAR, and you fill in your seed phrase, your private key, and then your wallet gets instantly drained. All the amounts aggregated over there are hundreds and thousands of HBARs that has been lost, that people have put a lot of effort in earning it, building it up. They just got drained and they get sent to bud.
It's actually millions and tens of millions of HBAR. These little scams that we don't hear about because it didn't have anything to do with the core Hedera code or anything with the Hedera network actually is a bigger scam than the exploit that we saw a few days ago. So it is very serious.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's right. I mean, it's tens of millions HBARs actually. We talked about that Brandon, you and I. But it's terrible. But I mean, maybe this whole exploit was a good thing. Maybe we can draw attention to all the other stuff that is happening, and this is the dusting attack. So I'm linking it with some other dusting attacks as well over here. Oh yeah, it was not the entire diagram. Some testing that has been done that then again links me to some other scams, some scams that have been reported on chain abuse. So please, if you have any scams, contact me, or you were a victim of a scam, contact me, or put your story on chain abuse, because that's all essential details.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Milan. Appreciate it. Yeah, so essentially, at the end of the day, the story is, be careful with your cryptocurrency, right? I mean, we're in the early days. We're all working really hard to to build out the ecosystem. Excuse me, just one second. But it's early, right? We're in the early days, and so while these, while the kind of the stopgaps are putting in, the usability issues that we're up against, you just got to be careful out there. So go ahead.
I just wanted to add something to that. I mean, Hedera ecosystem has been really small all up until we started seeing all these DeFi applications, and I think DeFi is the main source of all, is grabbing the attention of hackers whenever the network starts building DeFi applications, because you have now interoperability bridges that bring a lot of funds to that network. And also you have smart contracts that accumulate a lot of funds into one smart contract. And hackers, it's an easy thing for hackers to hack. Instantly they can get access to so much funds, rather than doing those kinds of dusting attacks, which is attacking individual accounts, which can take longer time to accumulate funds. So we need to be very careful, especially with the fame that's coming to Hedera. Ecosystem is growing. There's going to be a lot more users coming in. We're going to see a lot more attacks, unfortunately, but we need to be careful. And these kinds of attacks are going to educate the community. People are going to start paying attention to the security, what kind of platforms they lock their funds into, what kind of smart contract platforms they use. And I would just recommend everybody use platforms that have security audits. At least some kind of third-party company has audited the code, even though it's never 100% secure, but at least you get a little bit of a comfort knowing that some other companies have looked into the code.
Right. And, and definitely, so on the positive side of this story, as was mentioned in the notes, and we'll provide the link to the Hedera website that gives the breakdown on the attack and exactly what happened. That'll be in the description. But on the fortunate side, wallets in this case, wallets like Walla Wallet were safe. Now, while we did experience an issue, folks, when they tried to open up Walla Wallet, the wallet was crashing due to the network outage. There was an exception being thrown that was not being handled properly by the wallet. But the funds themselves were safe. The private, basically the keys being locked away, tucked away safe, that never changed. So while the application was having an issue, and we've, and so far in resolving the support tickets that were generated, Everybody's thumbs up, HBAR is still there, their accounts are safe. There was also some issues with with some of the like Dragon Glass and some of the other mirror nodes where they were showing zero balances. And of course, when somebody goes to open up their wallet and sees, the wallet crashes, and then they look it up on Dragon Glass or one of the others, and they see that there's a zero balance, that was kind of one of those heart attack moments where they're like, oh no, their worst nightmare has come true. But no, fortunately, none of that happened. And so it was just these the liquidity pools that were at risk with this particular exploit. So there is some silver lining. All right, so unless there's other comments and questions, I mean, we're going to kind of touch base on that, throughout the rest of the call. I wanted to show off, because native staking, you avoid some of the risk there. There's no liquidity pools. Like with native staking, a little less risky. I was going to show that off, but I'm within Walla Wallet every week. I like to show off a little bit of the Walla Wallet in action, but I'm having some issues with the device that I was going to show you on. So we'll just go ahead and skip that for now. But David, I want to kind of go back to ParyFund here. So now that we're kind of gotten through the drama, I was pretty sure that the users were going to want to get a little bit of update, especially because the attack has been, the exploit was resolved, network's back up. But ParyFund, so something that I think is really critical, especially for a network and ecosystem that is, in this kind of early nascent stage that we're in. So you talked a little bit about what ParyFund is. So I'm guessing you deal with quite a few startups in your endeavors here. And I was wondering, so for folks that are out there that are, either running startups themselves or are thinking about jumping into the space, what would you say are some of the most important steps for startups, particularly ones that are building in crypto, and even more specifically the ones that are building in Hedera? Are there, would you say that there are, that there are milestones? Like, what are some of the things that you would look at for startups that are looking to do fundraising?
Yeah, definitely. Well, first and foremost, what's your product? That's like oddly enough, that's one question that we ask people right away and people can't answer. And if you can't do that, you maybe want to go back to the drawing board. Does your product or service solve a friction point? What is that friction point? What are competitors in the space? How are you going to do better than these competitors? One thing we always look forward to is, have you personally invested your money into your project? We see a lot of projects come to us and they're like, well, we're going to do a mint and we're going to raise funds and then we're going to start building. That's not how it's done, right? Like if I don't see your money involved, why am I going to invest mine? You know what I mean? Like if you're not going to risk your own capital on yourself, why are you risking my capital? But basically we try to see, we keep it very simple. Like, what's the problem? How does your product or service solve it? And what's your plan to get there? And right now, a lot of these projects too, do you even need an NFT or a token? Like, you know what I mean? Like, is it really required in the space? A lot of the projects we see kind of get ahead of themselves. Like, take it one step at a time. We see projects come to us with plans for a second mint when they haven't done their first mint. How are you going to drive demand to create enough demand for a second mint? A lot of projects get tied up with this whole DAO. We're going to be a DAO. We strongly discourage that for startups right off the bat. You want your technology and IP in-house. You want people with the same shared vision that you have. A DAO, optically, it looks great, right? It's community involved, but how do you know that these community members are going to have the best interest? How are you going to know their visions are aligned with yours? But one thing most importantly is, we look at the total addressable market of Hedera. And we've been using NFTier. I don't know if anybody uses it, but they have for these like online analytics. It's pretty cool. If you hold like one of these woke femme NFTs, you get access to their advanced analytics. But you'll see that like the ecosystem, it only covers NFTs right now, but it's incredibly small. So, even with the amount of capital you're looking to raise, is there a total addressable market that's going to let you, that's going to, help you recoup what you've invested and then some, and then generate revenue. And then with the macro environment, interest rates have risen almost 4.5% in the last 12 months. how is your project like? So I'm essentially getting 4.5% for doing nothing with my cash, right? Like it just gets stronger every time they raise basis point, every time the Fed raises, and ultimately that also brings down valuation. So it's just a stronger dollar across the board. How is your project going to generate, at least 5% revenue, or at least a 5% return to entice someone to want to take that risk? So these are a lot of questions we ask. I will say I'm not seeing any meaningful deployment from an institutional level of capital into the space. A lot of it has to do with the total addressable market. They're looking for, if you're Hedera native, there needs to be a cross-chain angle, just to increase market size, market potential. But yeah, right now everyone's kind of in a holding pattern, and the macro environment too, with interest rates going up, it's almost safer just to your point. You mentioned it earlier, native staking, right? Like, why don't I just leave it in my wallet and collect 6.5% and wait and see how things kind of shake out. I hope that answered your question. Sorry, I can.
No, absolutely. No, absolutely. No, absolutely. So the addressable market, that's something that that's a kind of a big question mark, right? So
yeah,
we look at the addressable market. We might say, you might say that there's 700,000 or so accounts with, HBAR accounts that actually have a balance, but then the addressable market, maybe a tenth of that.
Yeah, like how many? I think we were seeing something like 400 or 500. I know Brandon's got his hand up. He might be able to touch on it better, but how many wallets are like truly active, right? That there's all sorts of metrics to use, but right. The ecosystem's definitely growing. I can say that firsthand experience. It was a lot easier to keep up with in November of 21 than it is now. We've got multiple DEXs. We've got these lending protocols coming on. Gaming, I don't know, everybody loves the bull or bear market. Like I've seen some casinos in the worst possible areas of America, and they always seem to do well. But gaming's coming to Hedera. So like everything's growing, right? It's just a matter of, from a venture capital perspective, is the ecosystem going to grow quick enough to generate enough alpha, enough of a return above the risk rate for their limited partners? Right. And that's it's just something that people are looking at now. But yeah, I know Brandon had his.
Yeah, go ahead, Brandon. What you got?
Oh, no, I guess the main thing with the addressable market, the only thing that I wanted to say, and this isn't the main point that I had my hand up for, but, a lot of it is about we want to expand. We want to make this pie bigger. And, we have Milan working with the Earthlings team. And, of course, they're getting into tapping into the gaming ecosystem that's much broader than Hedera. We have NFT space that's obviously expanding very broadly. And we have Hangry that's doing a lot of good work in that space. But it's specifically for startups, I think one of the things that hurt us as Twigital early on is we wanted to get the stamp of approval of either the HBAR Foundation or the Swiss Hashgraph Association or one of the incubators before we really moved forward and then tried to approach other investors. And I think that slowed us down, not because there's any issue with any of those entities, but they kind of want to hop on the bandwagon as well. They want to see what you've built and how much capital you can raise on your own. So the one suggestion I would have to anybody that's building out there is don't wait for any of those entities to help you out. You go and do it yourself. You go and try to raise the money, whether that's friends and family, whether that's small angel investors, whatever it is. And if you can't raise that capital from those entities, your friends and family and small angel investors and so forth, your idea might need to be tweaked a little bit. You might need to figure out how you can increase your addressable market, whatever it is, to hone, or how you explain it. You might not have the right pitch to explain what might be a very good idea. But I think that slowed us down as far as Twigital a lot in the beginning. Is we wanted that first step to be one of these ecosystem growing entities that are out there, instead of saying, hey, let's just go and do this ourselves the old-fashioned way and convince some small angel investors that this is a good project. And as soon as we started to get some traction there, raising our own money the old-fashioned way, that's when we started to get more attention from some of the incubators and ecosystem partners. But yeah, that's the one thing I wanted to throw in there. I know pretty much everybody on the call today is building a startup in this space in one fashion or another. And yeah, it's been a fun process, that's for sure.
Yeah, Brandon said it best. If your mom's not going to give you money, who is, right? Like it's. Yeah.
And if you're not willing to risk your mom's capital,
Yeah.
Again, you might not have the greatest idea. I know early on with Twigital, I was hesitant to take money from people because I was like, it is a startup. 90% of the startups fail. When I knew we really had a good idea, when I was like, yeah, come on, I think it's a viable thing. It's a good risk to take. That's when you know you have a good idea.
Right. So, and it reminds me of something that Brett McDowell said. So, Brett McDowell over from the Hedera Governing Council, after the World Economic Forum, he was asked, like, what were some of the main takeaways? And really the main takeaway that he said was, and this is, talking about Hedera at large. So, we're startups building on Hedera, but even for Hedera itself, the point was, focus on the successes that you've had. Focus on what Hedera can do now, not what it might be able to do in the future or all these great things that can come in. So it's like, what problems are you solving right now? What are the friction and pain points that you're able to address right now? Don't worry about, what you can do and what you might be able to do and all these things. Just focus on on the pain points that you actually resolve. So it's not just for startups. I mean, if you look at Hedera as a startup, I mean, it's a pretty big startup, right? I think it's officially been deemed as been given the unicorn status, at least by the folks at the World Economic Forum. But yeah, so basically the same kind of guidelines are for them. Yeah, go ahead, Milan. What you got?
Yeah, so Brendan touched on Earthlings. That's thanks for mentioning that. Yeah, I'm part of the Earthlings team. Let me just lower my hand. I've been so since kind of the beginning. I mean, I saw them quite early, and they're Dutch as well. So I was always like, "Oh, you're going to Hedera? That's so cool!" And they didn't know anything about Hedera, only that their developer looked at different chains, and he found like, "Oh, Hedera, it's a breeze for any developer." So yeah, I joined them as the core team early on. But what I found so exciting with Earthlings is that first of all, you're building in a wonderful market time. I really love the bear market because you can just build. The Earthlings founders, they have invested their own money to build it out, and always the approach has been, we need to be flexible, adaptable. We can scale down if it's needed. We can scale up if it's needed. The studio has been built up so they're basically since the beginning, we've been building up a studio. We're with more than 20 people right now, and we're creating all these new builders and that join, and no grant funding has been applied for or has been received or whatsoever, and which I think is so important to have, like, this very strong basis, right? That you have the foundations and that you can scale down if needed, and then once you get that solid basis, just as you say, Brandon, that you've got the recognition. We really believe in the recognition of the community, that we have a strong roots. And then we build up with a strong foundation.
Right.
And I'm very, very proud to say that we've reached at the point that you think that we know where we are heading to. We're working on a mini game as well. And obviously, again, it's always on quality. So very excited about that.
Right. So speaking of strong foundations and a lot of positive feedback coming from the community, Andy, so Citadel Wallet obviously getting a lot of attention. Was there we want to talk about Citadel Wallet, but if the floor is yours.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I do echo a lot of the sentiments the guys were saying about starting a project, building something from ground up. Especially for me personally, this is my very first startup, and building a hardware wallet, I knew it's going to be a tricky one, going into an industry where there is few hardware wallets already. Ledger is considered almost like the iPhone of hardware wallets in this ecosystem. I knew there is going to be a little bit of challenges in terms of people will think, who the hell is this guy? Came out of nowhere, thinks he's gonna make a hardware wallet and compete with this big guys. But having the background and experience of building all kinds of very secure and mission critical application based embedded systems, I had the confidence in myself. So I think for all all entrepreneurs who are starting their own businesses and startups, they first of all need to have the confidence in themselves, and then spending the time and effort. Like the guy said, you have to put in your own money, your own time, at least get to some kind of a prototype stage where now it's not just an idea, people start taking you seriously. I wouldn't bring the wallet into the industry, into the ecosystem, if I didn't know this is a viable product already. And we have spent 6 to 8 months quietly just building the wallet, and just now starting to make noise because we have reached a stage where we're already going to show some pictures and images of the wallet, videos of how we connect to Hashback and sign transactions. It's not an idea anymore. And that's when we decided to go to market and present the product to the community. And then people will start taking you seriously.
So who designed the hardware, Andy?
I designed it.
That was a loaded question. I knew that.
Yeah. So I started developing the hardware, coming up with the concepts of how it needs to look, what the size of the screen should be. I looked into a lot of different hardware wallets in the ecosystem to see what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong. Obviously, if you guys have used some of the most popular hardware wallets, everybody has had the frustration of using these wallets, how hard it is to set up, how hard it is to navigate. You have a very small screen. There's no touch screen. There's just a couple of buttons that you can navigate through. So I wanted to develop a wallet that is not only very secure, but also is very user-friendly, to the point where people just love these devices, just love holding it in their hand, just love seeing it sitting on their desk. I have that kind of a mentality when it comes to product development. And that's what I focused on outside of just security. Obviously, security is the highest priority. And what we're shooting for is to build a hardware wallet that is going to be way more secure than Ledger or any other hardware wallets. Awesome. I want to make sure we set a new standard for security, and all based on Hedera Network.
So you're designing. So you design the hardware. What about on the software side? Who can you talk about who it is you're working with on the software side?
Yeah. So this when I developed the hardware, started testing some of the simple functionalities, I started looking for teams from the ecosystem that could help me to develop the software for the wallet. I do have a little bit of software background, but not to the level that I could develop the firmware and software for the wallet. At the time, I was working with Headstarter. I was helping them on the business development side to connect them with all the ecosystem projects. And I got to talk to the guys, developers at Headstarter, and coincidentally, one of the guys from the software development team had a passion for this kind of low power, secure IoT type of devices. So we talked about, we talked a little bit about how it would be a good idea to develop a hardware wallet based on the secure microprocessors. And then from there, I just offered them to come on board and support me with the hardware development, with the software development.
Excellent. So the Headstarter team. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you couldn't find a better partner within the Hedera ecosystem. I mean, great folks over at the Headstarter team. I mean, they've been super active for quite a while now. So I'm glad you got hooked up with them. That's a great team.
It was a perfect match. I was looking for a team that was knowledgeable on the Hedera side of things, and at the same time had experience developing secure IoT type device firmware. And it was just a perfect match. And we started working a few months ago, and we have made a lot of progress on the software side as well. We just recently had an announcement of partnership with Hashback. We've been working closely with Hashback as well, because hardware wallet doesn't work in isolation. It needs to be paired with software wallets from the ecosystem to start signing the transactions. And they have been helpful. Headstarter has been helpful. We're going to show some really exciting demos very soon, within like a few weeks. Yeah.
And just to toot the Walla Wallet horn a little bit as well, we'll be working with Citadel Wallet as well. We've got some unique needs in terms of so we interact with the Go SDK, which is a little bit is kind of a lesser used and lesser known language. So it's not quite as common in the Hedera ecosystem. So we do have some unique needs, but we will be working through those as soon as possible.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. I would love to work with all of the software wallet providers in the community, in the ecosystem, and make sure that they add that extra level of security through pairing with a hardware wallet and signing all the transactions.
Love it. And I've got tons of other questions. So this is pretty jam-packed episode. So hopefully folks will be willing to come back for like a part 2 interview so we can kind of dive in a little bit more. Yeah, Brandon, what you got?
Yeah, the one thing that just listening to Andy talk, it's highlighted something that's kind of been formulating in my mind. And Jeremy, I know you've heard me kind of talk along these lines. I don't think HBARbarians should be underestimated. HBARbarians that want to build in the space. I think that, a lot of times, Andy's a great example. Oh, you're going to build a hardware wallet and it's going to, compete with Ledger. Yeah, sure. Do not underestimate people like that, because the passion and whatever, the people that are attracted to this space, when they say they're going to do something, I would get out of their way. And that's one of the things I know that the Earthlings team, has become. You can tell when they become HBARbarians, when they get that fever, and you can tell Patrick's gotten that. You can tell Marcel has gotten that way. I think that they're going to be one of the most successful games not only in the Hedera ecosystem but across Web3. And it's the same thing when you look at wallets. Like I know, in the beginning there was a lot of focus on, Exact and Bread, and which are the most successful wallets in our space? Walla Wallet, Blade, and Hashback, all homegrown HBARbarian type wallets, right? So, and I think it goes across the board. The same thing with, Jesse and I with Twigital. We had what we thought was a good idea, but we weren't developers. How could we possibly do this? But it's going to come to fruition. And just like Andy has a huge vision to have a wallet that's more secure than Ledger out there, or Earthlings has their idea for this amazing Web3 game. My goal right now is for Twigital, for various reasons, to be the largest revenue producer on the Hedera network, and I think we can achieve it. so I mean, that was all I wanted to say. Is the HBARbarians that want to build out there, don't doubt yourself, because the ones that become passionate in this space build amazing things.
Yeah,
So
Brandon, just to chime in and to support you, Brandon, regarding HBARbarians, and something Andy might not have mentioned. In a recent call, you mentioned something fleeting about having designed F18 security systems, and coming from that background, you're coming to design a hardware wallet. Then that means the likes of Ledger and the rest don't have anything on you, because given from the military background.
And Tim's a big aeronautics buff, so anytime there's mention of fighter jets, or really or aeronautics in general, Tim's all ears. I know that. David, so I did want to ask David. So there was we touched a little bit on the friends and family round versus angel and seed round, Series A, all these things. So you mentioned founders putting in their own money. So in your mind, how important is something like a friends and family round? How important is it for a team? Because I've kind of heard, I've kind of gotten mixed results. Some people say, friends and family round, we just go straight for the seed, go straight for the angel investors. Nobody cares about a friends and family round anymore. And then I've had other investors say, no, absolutely. If you're not getting your friends and family involved, then if they're not willing to bet on you, then why should I? So in your opinion, could you kind of, what's your opinion of the friends and family round in that super early kind of fundraising stage?
Yeah. So to take a step back, like the most important commodity you have as a founder is your time, right? There's only 24 hours a day. I'm sure with Walla Wallet, you've wished it was 35 hours a day. You know what I mean? It's like, especially when you're building. When you start taking on outside capital in any capacity, you're adding another point of contact, no matter how. So it depends on who you feel is going to give you the least amount of trouble and who's going to give you the most amount of help. I know if I borrowed money from my parents, they'd leave me alone, right? But I know if I borrow money from my brother, he's gonna hound me every day. What'd you spend it on? Why'd you do that? You know what I mean? So it's like just an added cook in the kitchen. If you take money on an institutional level from a VC, right? Are they adding value to your project, or are they just a capital provider? So when it comes to between angels and friends and family, the other thing too with the VC, I should say, is they have a fiduciary obligation to their underlying investors. Like at the end of the day, they have a timeline. It's usually 2 to 5 years. It's a typical venture capital fund. They usually reserve like 1 to 2 extra years for it's like an add-on period if they feel like they could, maximize value out of one of their investments. But when you take money from a venture capital, they're going to be out of that investment within 2 to 5 years. It's just how it works. They make a profit, they give it to the LPs and move on. With friends and family and like a direct, like an angel investor, it depends on how you get along with them and what the expectations are. What's going to come along with that capital. I can tell you, if I take money from my parents, they're not going to add any value to crypto. You know what I mean? Like they have no clue what they're doing with it. So it'd just be taking capital. Now, if I found like Hedera, like say I took capital from the HBAR bull, right? I know that Brandon could add a ton of value to the project along with not just the check. I also know that he's very mature in his investing, so he's not going to hound me every day. We probably have a bi-weekly catch up or something to see where we're at, where we need to pivot, like what his thoughts are from the investing perspective. It just depends on who you feel comfortable with. Like before you take money from anyone, get to know them. A lot of these, like especially in the venture capital community, no one really deploys capital right away. They usually take a while to get to know the founders and vice versa to make sure it's a fit. Because once you you can't really get unpregnant, for lack of a better analogy. Like once you take that money, like you're together thick or thin. So it's a level of comfort. So provided if you've been investing your own money, right, you should have some runway so you can actually take the time to develop these relationships and see what you feel comfortable with. It's just it's a question of how much capital can you get and how much time are they going to take away from you building?
Right.
And you just want to be able to find a happy medium with that.
Okay. So I want to kind of take it back to I want to kind of wrap it back to the initial discussion that we got into over the attack and the exploit that happened that's been resolved. So this is really for any of you, particularly David, though. Critics of Hedera have pointed to reliance on Swirlds Labs as being a cause for concern, a point of centralization that Hedera may or may not be able to overcome even with anonymous nodes in the future. So I kind of wanted to I want to get a general feeling for what do you think about this reliance on Swirlds Labs in terms of the health of the network in the long term, and what kind of effect does that, and then so it's kind of a two-part question, and then in turn, what effect does that have on investments, on investors and their view of the network and projects building on Hedera?
I think it adds a level of comfort to early stage investors. We got into Hedera mainly because I like the governing council. I think I said in one of my first interviews with Brandon, I don't think true decentralization is possible. It doesn't matter how you slice it, this hack is a hack, right? If I'm an enterprise looking to come over to Hedera, it doesn't bode well that it was down for, 36 hours total. You can't have that, right? But there's a security measure there too that allows me to know that losses were mitigated and that things moved in a rather orderly process. And I'm sure if this ever happens again, they probably have, a process review in place to make sure they can mitigate it even quicker. So the beauty of crypto is that it's got the memory span of my 8-year-old, right? Like he's upset about something in the morning and then give it a little time to blow over. I think the network long-term is going to slowly wean off its reliance on Swirlds, but I like the idea that there's an active agency building behind the scenes, right? It's not just reliant on tourists coming and going, it's what ecosystem is the flavor of the month. I know there's a big multi-billion HBAR payment to Swirlds. I take a little comfort in knowing that we got them locked up for 2 years. A lot can happen in 2 weeks in crypto. It'd be fascinating to see, look at what's happened in the last 2 years. I've been as of November, I will have been in Hedera 2 years, basically. And it's grown exponentially, right? So I can only imagine what could happen over the next 2 years. So I look at it as a positive. If I'm an institution coming in, I don't know how many institutions want true decentralization as much as they would like some exposure to DeFi. And if you can give them that added level of comfort that knowing, there's Swirlds and a whole governing council behind it, along with just the ecosystem, I think it bodes well. I would advise, just for karma's sake, let's stop making fun of Solana and the other chains that have shut down in the past. And I don't know if any of you guys are like old, Ether funk days, but like there was a time in like 2017, 2018 where I was like just hitting the refresh button on Etherscan, you know, and BTC scan to make sure like anything went through. Like there was a couple, I think there's a couple Ether transactions way back in the day that like it took like 36 hours to send it between wallets. So like I know people want everything now, but everything's come a long way in like 6 years. Hedera especially for the last 2. So I would recommend no more hacks. Maybe get away from the smart contract narrative. I get why they did it, but like you're still trying to put a block into a hash graph. Maybe stick with what, you know, maybe get a little bit more to the core with smart nodes and everything.
Right.
But you know, that's just my 2 cents. Ultimately, I think the response outweighed the action that happened. I think everyone, to Tim's point earlier, was handled professionally. Maybe in the long term, you know, Hedera probably could have gotten in front of it a little bit more. There's nothing wrong with keeping people probably like hacks happen in DeFi. This stuff happens. Unfortunately, this is the first. As long as you communicate, you know, transparency goes a long way. And I thought they did a good job. You know, if I wanted to make a compliment sandwich, maybe they could, you know, could have gotten in front of it a little bit more.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I think their response and the professionalism and the ability to mitigate all the risk, I think that's going to outweigh the actual hack itself.
And quick shout out to the H-Suite team building the smart nodes and working on that infrastructure, because I know that they're working hard on that and really trying to get away from the reliance on smart contracts. So H-Suite team really been doing some knockout work. I just kind of wanted to give them some acknowledgement real quick. So Andy, I did want to ask you real quick. So we also get some grief from, you know, some advisors, investors on betting on one technology, right? So, or one technology sector. So they say that, you know, betting on one network like Hedera is risky at best, and at worst it's downright foolish to kind of, you know, to pour everything into one network. What helps you sleep at night when you think about the resources that you personally are pouring into the network? What do you say to the naysayers?
Yeah, I mean, when you make that kind of a judgment, when you choose one network over others, you need to spend a lot of time doing a research, trying to understand how these networks work before you make that decision. I have been doing research on Hedera for the last 3 to 4 years already. And at the same time, I've been watching other networks, other blockchain-based networks. What I don't see on other blockchain-based networks, there's a lot of hype. That's the only thing I see on other networks. I don't see any utility going to those networks, and that's what puts me to sleep at night, is seeing all these different types of use cases and applications coming on board Hedera almost like weekly. We can see from HBAR Foundation giving grants to all kinds of different applications and use cases, and not talking about enterprise type use cases, some of which have already gone live, like Atma.io on Hedera Network. I also haven't seen any other network talk about TPS as a way to measure utility of the network. And that's kind of been thrown aside because these networks cannot handle high TPS, so they don't really like to talk about that. So I'm not really worried about being just focused on Hedera. I actually think that when you find a network that is as performant, as energy efficient, as secure as Hedera Network, then you have to pour all the efforts and time into the network. And I also believe that I shouldn't rely on somebody else making the network useful. I should put in the effort to make it useful for others, right, by building a hardware wallet that is very unique and provides ability to sign all kinds of transactions in a secure way. That's going to attract a lot of users from other networks to Hedera, hopefully. And I'm doing my part to not only promote through social media, but also create some kind of framework or application or platform for users to see the benefit of the network.
Interestingly enough, now that you what you said kind of made me think, one of our advisors that continually warned us about being focused and being locked into one network is also the same advisor that told us that we need to stay focused. So so it's kind of an interesting dichotomy there. So Tim, I know we're past the top of the hour. I appreciate you guys sticking around. I know we're all busy folks, so I can't thank you enough for being here. But Tim, do we have any questions come in from the YouTube audience before we start wrapping this thing up?
Yes, we've got a lot of questions, and I hope you guys are getting me clearly because my connection is a little bit shaky.
And
Hello?
how are we? So yeah, you're fine. We hear you. We hear you fine, Tim.
Can you get me? Can you hear?
Yes, we can. Uh-oh, but he can't hear us. Uh-oh. Well.
So we've got a lot of questions coming from the audience.
Okay.
One, two. Okay, I've lost you guys.
Well,
Okay,
we can do
one,
10, but
if such a thing happened again where Hedera shuts off the network. Hello?
all right. So unfortunately, it seems like we've lost him. So I'm going to go ahead and so we'll have to catch up with the questions unless somebody's got the live stream pulled up, like Brandon, if any of you got it pulled up and you want to ask the questions, but we may have to look at the questions after the fact and kind of and do it that way. All right, so final thoughts, David. So if folks want to catch up with ParyFund and Hashfarms, what's the best way for them to either reach out to you or to learn more about what it is that you're doing?
You can, again, thanks for having me, by the way. This is a lot of fun, Jeremy. Appreciate it.
Thank you for saying so.
No, I always enjoy it. That's like a Monday lunch conversation.
Right.
Just need a cheese.
I used to call it the DLT. I used to call it the DLT sandwich because it was at lunchtime, and
I like that.
kind of take a layered approach. But I don't know. So I kind of I went with alternative money. It seemed a little bit more specific.
Sounds classier. It's all encompassing.
Right. Yeah.
No, you can reach me on Twitter. It's at Hashfarms, or you can also reach me on Discord at Hashfarms-6 and then you can reach me on Twitter, or not on Twitter, on Telegram at ParyFund, ParyFund. I try to respond right away, but if you want, if you're comfortable and you're in the States, ping me on one of those. But then you can just call me. It makes life easier. I'll still pick up the phone guy, but. Yeah. Nice. Again, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And hopefully you'll come back for another one of these, because I had tons more questions, but this wound up being one of those that I bit off a little bit more than I could chew in terms of content. So
have me anytime. I'm available. Love doing it.
Thank you. How about you, Andy? What's the best way for people to keep a hold of what Citadel Wallet is doing? What's the best way to reach out to you if you have questions or just to follow the project in general?
Anybody who's interested in the project, they can just follow Citadel Wallet Twitter account. We also have a Discord page. We have a pre-orders round coming up very shortly, which will launch on Headstarter platform. It's going to be on March 29th and 30th. And we have a creative way of doing the wallet pre-orders through an NFT project we're building on top of Citadel Wallet. It's called Guardians of the Citadel. And by buying those NFTs, people will basically pre-order the wallets. And then when we go to market at the end of the year, they can go on the website and claim the hardware wallets associated with those NFTs. So we're trying to bring the best of Web3 into a hardware wallet project, which on its own might have been a little bit boring if it's just the hardware wallet. I do want to use this NFTs and Web3 aspect of things to help build the brand and the community around it. So
awesome.
And I also have a small account called HBAR to the Moon. People can always follow me there too.
Yeah, that's one of those, and HBAR to the Moon. I mean, that's been, that's one of the handles that I've seen really since as far back as I can remember. So it's awesome to see you actually coming forth and and like I said earlier, putting your real life skills to use and building something out to help the network out. Can't thank you enough.
Yeah, really excited, and thanks for having me today.
Oh yeah, we'll have you back for another one. So Milan, was there anything you wanted to throw out as far as keeping track of what you're up to over there with your multitude of projects, Mr. No Code himself?
That's a whole other topic.
We'll have you back on to talk about no code another time. But if there's
Absolutely.
anything you want to throw out there, now's the time.
You just follow me on Twitter. I mean, I'm just currently only working on that diagram. So any news I'll throw out there, and if you have any hints, any suspicions, or want to throw the scammer under the bus because you know it's your neighbor, please do it and let me know.
Great. All right.
I had Hedera Dev on Twitter.
Hedera Dev, got it. And we're going to put this stuff in the description below. So, you know, I don't want to end this without doing our Market Mondays. Brandon,
Double it up. Oh, Market Mondays. Jeremy, I do have to jump off.
Okay.
I do.
I'll let
We'll
you
hit
go
it up
then.
next week.
Okay, great. Because there's some positive action. I just thought it was hilarious that I looked and, you know, like after all this, HBAR is down 7% on the news, even though the whole market was anyway. We'll cover it next time. See you, Brandon. Thanks, buddy. I mean, HBAR's up. It's like we're actually doing pretty well. You know, maybe bad news is good news.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so I know we're going long here. Favorite part of the show, though, we're going to give away some jam tokens. My main man, Tim Mungai, our community manager, is experiencing technical difficulties, so I'm going to do the honors here. But at Paul H. Bar is our 10,000 jam token winner. At Paul H. Bar on Twitter. So big shout out to the Twitter family. Thanks so much for joining us and and following in on these giveaways. And shout out to Andrew Antar and the folks over at Tune.fm for giving us these jam promotional tokens. So we will be reaching out to you at Paul H. Bar, the jam token winner of 10,000 tokens. All right. So I love getting these tokens into people's hands because, even though it's not a whole lot of money, but it's just a great way for people to see how fast and efficient this network is. Give them something to kind of play around with. So I always love doing that. And all right, so that is it for this episode of Alternative Money Monday. Again, I'm JR, co-founder of Ledgerama, makers of Walla Wallet, the original, the safest, and the trusted mobile wallet of the Hedera ecosystem. Folks out there in the YouTube land, if you liked the show, please subscribe to the channel, give us a like. If you didn't like what you saw, give us a thumbs down, but don't forget to leave a comment and let us know what you did or did not like about the show. Can't thank the guests enough for being here. And we will see everybody next week for another episode of Alternative Monday, and we're signing out. All right, everybody. Adios. Thanks for being here.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
again.
See ya.
Cheers.